Navigation canals are essentially artificial waterways created to facilitate the transport of both people and goods between large bodies of water such as lakes, rivers, seas, or oceans. These canals are built for various reasons, primarily to create shortcuts to avoid long detours, as well as to provide inland cities with a direct shipping link to the sea. However, some canals, whether due to their enormous size, curious qualities, or extreme circumstances, have gone down in history as true engineering marvels worthy of being remembered for their great service and utility to humanity. And that's why, in this video, I'll show you the 10 most amazing navigation canals that exist in the world. 10. Welland Canal. The Welland Canal is an impressive 42-kilometre-long navigation canal located in Ontario, Canada, connecting Lake Ontario with Lake Erie. By crossing the Niagara Peninsula, it allows ships to ascend and descend the Niagara Escarpment, thus avoiding its famous waterfalls. About 3,000 ships pass through this canal each year, taking an average of 11 hours to traverse it. And because there's a 100-metre elevation difference between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, 8 locks are used to raise and lower vessels. The downside is that due to the cold during winter, ice makes transport very dangerous, if not impossible, which is why it remains closed during this season, reopening again with the arrival of spring. 9. Canals of Venice. You can't make a video about canals without talking about Venice, which, with its approximately 200 canals serving as streets, has rightfully earned the nickname the City of Canals. Venice is situated in a lagoon of the same name located in the northern Adriatic Sea, and, as you can imagine, cars don't exist here. So to get around, we have to take the Vaporetto, a kind of water bus. Gondolas mainly used for tourist transport, or the traghetto, a low-cost alternative to gondolas primarily used by Venetians to move around these parts. And although Venice seems to be built directly on water, the reality is that the city is built on a primitive atoll that forms an archipelago of almost 120 islands connected by more than 450 bridges, so that while it looks like a floating city, it's actually built on land. 8. Magdeburg Water Bridge. The Magdeburg Water Bridge, located in Germany, is famous for being the longest navigable aqueduct in the world at 918 metres long, 34 metres wide and just over 4 metres deep. This bridge connects the Elbe-Havel Canal with the Mittelland Canal, crossing the Elbe River. Construction began in 1997 and was completed in 2003, with the aim of shortening the route for ships by about 12 kilometres, a distance that was often doubled when water levels were insufficient. This bridge has therefore provided an extremely useful navigable shortcut for both passenger and freight transport. On the other hand, this fascinating canal bridge, besides being an extraordinary work of engineering, is currently a major tourist attraction that manages to generate true admiration in all the fortunate tourists who visit it. 7. Kiel Canal. The Kiel Canal, known until 1948 as the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal, is a long artificial canal 98 kilometres long, 100 metres wide and about 11 metres deep that connects the Baltic Sea with the North Sea. And despite not being one of the best known canals, it is one of the busiest in the world, allowing more than 100 vessels to pass through each day. Thanks to this canal, ships save an average of about 460 kilometres. And although traversing it can take between 7 and 8 hours depending on traffic, the alternative is to skirt the entire Jutland Peninsula, which could take days or even weeks. And not only that, but also cost us our lives, as the storms in these seas are famous for their disproportionate fury. It's no wonder that the Kiel Canal is currently the main commercial maritime route between the Baltic countries and the rest of the world. 6. Falkirk Wheel. The Falkirk Wheel is a peculiar and unique work of engineering located near Falkirk, a town in central Scotland, hence its name. It is essentially a rotating boat lift that looks like a Ferris wheel and is responsible for connecting the Forth and Clyde Canal with the Union Canal, which are separated by a height difference of approximately 24 metres. Its construction took place between 2000 and 2002, and it is currently capable of raising and lowering up to 8 vessels simultaneously, or the equivalent of about 600 tonnes in total. 5. Rideau Canal. Dividing Ottawa, the capital of Canada, in two, the Rideau Canal is one of the main emblems of the Canadian province of Ontario. This monumental canal from the early 19th century extends for over 200 kilometres along the courses of the Rideau and Cataraqui rivers. It was built primarily for military and strategic purposes at a time when Great Britain and the United States were vying for control of the region, and it was one of the first canals designed specifically for steam vessel navigation, possessing an important set of striking fortifications. And while the Rideau Canal is a true marvel during summer, its winters are almost magical, as from approximately January to March, its waters freeze to a depth of about 7 metres, constituting the world's longest skating rink at almost 8 kilometres long. 4. Suez Canal. Located in Egypt, the Suez Canal is by far one of the most important engineering works in our history, as it managed to connect the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea, thus creating a shorter maritime route between Europe and the East without having to circumnavigate the African continent, which would delay them by about 3 weeks or so. This fascinating maritime shortcut completed its construction back in 1869 with a length of about 193 kilometres, a depth of approximately 24 metres and a maximum width of about 350 metres. The downside is that since there was no machinery available at first, and everything had to be done by hand in this infernal desert climate, of the 1.5 million workers who participated in its construction, it is estimated that more than 120,000 lost their lives in this legendary work, through which about 20,000 vessels pass each year today. 3. Grand Canal of China. The Grand Canal of China is the largest artificial canal ever created in human history. Its construction was carried out by the Chinese emperors of the Sui dynasty between the years 581 and 618, covering no less than about 1,800 kilometres in length. Its mission was to meet the needs of important cities by transporting goods through it, and it remained active until the 19th century, at which time it underwent a series of modifications that in many cases culminated in disastrous floods, with several sections deteriorating until they were separated from the main body of the canal. For this reason, it is currently divided into 7 sub-canals, and many of them are either heavily polluted or do not have sufficient water levels for navigation. But the largest ones, such as the Lee Canal, are still used for transporting coal and other materials, with an estimated 100 million tonnes of cargo moved annually through them. 2. Panama Canal. You can't make a video about canals without mentioning the legendary Panama Canal, which is undoubtedly one of the greatest and most marvellous engineering works of the entire 20th century. Located between the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean, this canal measures around 80 kilometres long, about 13 metres deep, and between 90 and 300 metres wide. Its construction was a great challenge both in engineering and logistics, and took decades of work, with an estimated 30,000 people losing their lives in its construction, affected by both climate and tropical diseases, as well as work accidents. All this served to create this canal that works thanks to an ingenious system of locks fed by the waters of Lake Gatun, which allows ships to ascend and descend from one ocean to another through a kind of water elevators that raises vessels to a height of about 26 metres above sea level, and then lowers them back to sea level on the other side of the canal. This incredible process makes each ship take an average of 8 to 10 hours to cross the canal, which, although it may seem like a long time, is nothing compared to the around 2 weeks or more It would take these ships to travel the alternative route bordering virtually all of South America. Moreover, the canal is active 24 hours a day and about 14,000 vessels cross it each year, so since its inauguration back in 1914, it has managed to shorten maritime communication in time and distance, thus decisively boosting economic growth worldwide. 1. Corinth Canal. Located in Greece, the Corinth Canal is an artificially created waterway between 1881 and 1893, with the purpose of joining the Gulf of Corinth with the Aegean Sea, thus avoiding having to make navigators go around the approximately 700 kilometres of the Peloponnese Peninsula, which is why this fascinating canal is currently used by around 11,000 vessels a year. Its design consists of a single canal just over 6,300 metres long, 8 metres deep and about 22 metres wide, located between two giant rocky walls that rise about 40 metres above sea level. The impressive thing is that today's ships reach sizes much larger than those of yesteryear. But despite this, there are quite a few crazy captains of large ships who decide to venture between its narrow walls being towed, even though a mistake could lead them to become vilely wedged between the rocks, which leaves us with truly fascinating images to see.